Ta-da!
Welcome to This Mystic Life podcast, a podcast that aims to look at the world differently, with total responsibility for sight. In this week's podcast, we take a pastoral walk through the environment I seem to be in, as I have to move from location to location as I make the recording. So it was very interesting. Really undoes that idea that there's ideal situational conditions for anything. And when something wells up in me and just needs to come through or desires to come through, it's my great joy to facilitate that. And yet I've always noticed that it seemed like the environment always seemed to facilitate in that moment. Things would go quiet. And today everything was the opposite of that. And yet it still felt conducive and somehow perfect. So enjoy. This is a deep dive into what's truly helpful as we play our part for the awakening mind. It's 18 years this week since I first arranged to come to America to go deeper on my journey on this pathway of awakening. And I came for a retreat and had many miracles along the way, even in preparing myself for coming. And now, 18 years later, I felt to sit still and say, well, what I came for, did I receive it for myself? And truly, I feel I have. Because what I was looking for was a practical application of the mind training of A Course in Miracles, a complete transfer of training and making no exception to the miracle. And even if for a moment I veer one way or the other in obscuring the perceptual problem for myself, it is an easy return to center and to that self-centered with a capital C, truest knowing thyself. And I think in a large part that has come from getting very clear on not just who I am in this story as I watch this world unfolding before me, but what my purpose is. And while I was always aware my purpose was forgiveness, there were slight hijack thoughts that came from earlier expectations from society or previous preferences for how to be in the world. And when you've grown up with a survival mechanism of making yourself helpful so that you're needed and so that you're not abandoned or forsaken, or because you think you're just not valuable and everyone else is, and therefore they deserve the love, care and attention, but you don't. There comes in not so much self-sacrificing as in like a martyrdom thing. There's lots of, I might be sitting on an anthill. Okay, let's see. I was wondering what the sensations were. Am I in your spot, guys? Can I be here? No? Yes? That could just be one exploratory ant. Well, this is a good example because do the ants need this little cozy spot more than me? Is it already their spot? Or am I just something they're encountering along the way? But my own prejudice, and this is against myself, would always say, I'm in the way. They need it more than me. I should give way to whatever they need. And I would make it so that their needs were incredibly gross, as in big in the French sense, as in overwhelming, because I would see the intensity they appear to be going through with not having what to me might seem very small needs or slight preferences met. They would seem to be tragically upset. And so this infantizing of people would come in whereby you thought they had to have that security blanket, that preference met, or they would be tragically upset. and you wanted that child not to be upset, and therefore you would supply or you would adhere to that preference. Now, I realized very early on in myself that my inherent preference was that other people would be happy. So I never felt left out or sidelined at the time, because it was like, oh, well, my preference is that you be happy. So, of course, we'll do it this way. Of course, we'll adhere to that desire you have. But what I didn't recognize, and it truly wasn't necessary for me to be different, even within that scenario. That was the character I was playing, that was the role I was fulfilling. I was the child diplomat, I was the emotional sponge, I was the one who believed I was almost like a watchdog or a home protection unit, or I was the witness to what was happening. What was important, though, was the perception of the purpose I had and the role I had given myself within that. And until I recognized that that was a false role, that wasn't what being truly helpful was about, and that I was not here to serve people. And I think for a lot of us, when we come to a pathway like A Course in Miracles that is relationship based, we inherently slip into, oh, relationship, yes, I know what that is. That's between men and women, fathers and sons, children and their mothers. Relationship is husbands and wives. Relationships is school teachers and school children and students. Without ever questioning that true relationship and what the Course teaches us, holy relationship, is actually between the Father and the Son, metaphysically. I'm having a funny experience where the ant has now gone up my thigh and I may have accidentally crushed it. Anyway, what is truly helpful now? And I always speak to what's truly helpful now, because when we project the error to time, like thinking, oh, I did something wrong when I was younger, now I have no access to it, now I'm just going to have to suffer the consequences of that decision or that action or that unfoldment for the rest of my life. That's projecting the error to time. When we take the correction with a capital C that the Holy Spirit offers, it's perceptual, and it erases perception of problems backwards and forwards. And it's always now. And so when we don't project the error to time, we empower ourselves to literally see things differently. And therefore the perceived, or let's say expected, consequences are also denied as being necessary. They're not eventual, and there is nothing causative in form. And this is where we get back into a miraculous state of mind. So let's stick with the one thing, as I said at the beginning, that I recognized was the biggest shift, the biggest departure. I had a perception, based on everything I've just shared with you now, as I came along, as we all do, we're raised to be good girls, to be good friends, good siblings, good daughters, good members of society, good school spirit, good town spirit, national pride, pride in your situation, your country, your family, everything. And that all feeds into that misidentification with the role of the person. And you realize that being good, even in all the ways that society have described to you, you're not truly happy, and you're not fulfilled, and you're not feeling like things are flowing anymore for you. Things have become stagnant. And while you could keep operating in that same groove, truly the parts of you that function well there have broken down. And suddenly you come across A Course in Miracles, however it happens for you. And you're like, oh my God, a pathway of relationship. This is it. This is the answer. This is my calling. This is what I need. And you come in and you begin. And yet what you're trying to do is get your groove back on in the same way. You just didn't recognize it. You're still wanting to be a good person, to be liked, to be appreciated, to be useful in the way I described, to be needed, so that you're not abandoned or ostracized. What happens when that is the way we approach something is that we have brought all of our previous roles and our previous preferences of expression of ourselves, the ones that were even appreciated and were good, and we are now co-opting them into this new form of mind training without recognizing that it's designed to release us from that programming. And so for a long while, the two seem to go side by side. Specialness and holiness seem to just trot along no problem. We have many miracles, not much change is asked of us, not much shift in perception occurs. We just seem to have found a lucky streak when we begin. But then, at some point, that groove breaks down again, because even though the Course, with its new perception and it's calling you to innocence and you get to question your guilt, has given you more grease for your wheels, you're actually still the same persona in the same rut, circling around. And so the system breaks down again. And all of this is described in the development of trust in the Course. So you find yourself on very squeaky wheels, making the rounds of your self-concept, trying harder, better, more, again, and again. It doesn't matter how spiritual the avenues are now. There's still an inherent rust setting in that needs to corrode the perceptual system you're operating through so that it can cease to function and you can fully question it. And so for me, I'm kind of jumping ahead now. There's kind of a whole lot of what look like steps in between. But truly, in jumping ahead, let's just say there's many iterations, like in the developments of trust, where you did not know what anything was for. And the developments of trust section, the 6 stages, they're circular in nature. They're not progressive. It's not like I'm on stage 1, I'm on stage 2. It's cyclical. You spin through them all and then you seem to come to a fruition, and there's a recognition and a shift in identity, and there's an enlarging of the self-concept and the way you perceive the world. And then following that, there's actually... Oh, I'm getting bitten bad. Maybe being here is not serving the whole, because usually ants show up when there's something about what serves the whole, and maybe I've been ignoring the communication. It's a pity. This is such a lovely spot. I'm getting my morning sun. And I, for myself, truly wanted to sit here, but literally getting bitten all over the place. So, the denouement, part 2, will have to come in a few minutes. Well, this is going to be a fun episode. Because here we are now, back in the sound booth, so you can hear the echo of it. Now, it's not a very professional sound booth. It's actually the cloakroom where I'm staying. So, I'm just laughing because I just had such a good example between the tree and the ants and getting here and the conversation that started as I walked in the door of what I'm talking about. The perception that you are here to help people will linger a long time. And once you begin to question, and I'd say, in fact, if anything is feeling sticky in your day, between you and your dog even, then the misperception that you're here to smooth out anything in form, wars, famines, other people's failures, your character's flaws, that is the perceptual problem. So that's not the call, you know? That's not your purpose. That's not what you're here to investigate, figure out, and finagle. You're actually here to go, look at this for a perceptual problem. And address it in the only place it can be addressed, which is in the mind. And here again, the mind. It's lowercase m, it's the deceived mind. It's sometimes right-minded, sometimes wrong-minded. It's split. Let me take a look at the split in the mind of the viewer. Because there is no other mind that needs correction. There's not their mind. There's not the mind of you when you were little. There's not the mind of those old folks that you're dealing with in your life who perhaps are becoming doddery and, distracted. There are no they. There is no other. It's the mind singular. And who can take that correction? Who, indeed? You. You, the one watching. Not the character you think you are, not your Christian name, not your given name, not your surname, is the only one. You, the one watching, the dreamer of the dream, is the only one that can take the correction. And what is the correction? One, you have a perceptual problem. You're plastered onto the screen, believing the character you perceive yourself to be and all the other characters you perceive are living independent lives and operating, and that there's a real and palpable thing happening. It's an illusion. It's a maya. What you're perceiving is a projection. Projection makes perception. And when we look at the world and we draw back, just a simple in-breath and a step back in your mind, their mind, helps to distance for a moment. Now you're not looking to detach in an emotional way. You're actually looking to step back deeper into whatever emotions and thoughts and feelings and desires and beliefs are present. And see them, not as causative, but see them as what's being reflected externally. And therefore, the external world, even of intimate relationships, even of spiritual relationships, becomes a big mirror in which you can see the mind, singular, clearly. And you are here for the awakening of the mind. That's your function. That's the wake-up mechanism for the mind. It may even appear that it affects multiple personalities, people. There's a dog yapping. But the ultimate reflection is not something that's real and true of you. The accuser will appear in many forms. The faces pointing back at you are only describing to you what you believe of the self you think you are. And once you begin to question that self, you can even have the most savage accusations coming at you and be unfazed. I'm not talking about you being immune as a person, uncaring, or that it's okay for you to receive barrages as a persona in the world of attack and hatred. I'm not condoning any behavior. What I am saying is that when you look at the world and the two characters and one, whether online or in person, is seemingly barraging another, you are looking at that external conflict in the mind that you are witnessing to and watching so that you can have an experience of forgiveness with it, with the perception. And that's what you bring to the Holy Spirit, you say. And if you couch it this way, it really helps. Holy Spirit, this is what I'm perceiving. Even to acknowledge that this is what I'm perceiving. I see Sarah. I see this other person. I see conflict. I see distress. I see ants. I see ants crawling all over Sarah while Sarah thinks she's trying to make her podcast. What are we seeing here? I see the dog yapping. Little guard dog that doesn't know it's a dachshund. What am I seeing? And when you witness to it like a storyboard or a scene in a film, it becomes a very different experience. And instead of interpreting, the intentions of others or your own intentions or even the unspoken drama you may perceive on the screen, what you're asking for is a truly helpful interpretation of what you're witnessing so that you can forgive your entire perception. So that you can forgive yourself and be released from this self-concept and this false identity of who you are. Who are you? If, as I describe, you include the self-concept that you consider yourself to be when you describe the scene to the Holy Spirit, then you're in the witness state watching. And yes, you may have a lot of bets on black and be rooting for one character over another. That still won't interfere as long as you recognize that. Are you in here?
Dude, I'm in a recording.
So, as you watch, when many interferences appear, and there have been many for me since I started this recording, which is very strange because it welled up in me the way it normally does. Now the car and the garage doors are opening. This is so interesting. Everything is conducive, so I don't want to step into thoughts of where I am as no longer conducive for what's given for me to do. And yet, to move the plot along and move the characters through time and space from one spot to another, if it's truly helpful, it will at times seem like the environment becomes slightly or very hostile. And you do need to notice that, not to make it more real, but to check in what the communication means with the Holy Spirit. Because sometimes it just means this scene is complete in the mind and it's time to move to the next scene. Other times it is the forgiveness opportunity that's being missed and is being brought starkly to the mind to witness to. Inherently, the environment in which you're in and those that are closest to you should not be constantly, intensely hostile, because that actually makes it very challenging to do any true forgiveness work because you're in a defended state the entire time. The ideal scenario, and of course there's no such thing, is one where there is actionable forgiveness opportunities and there's also rest and respite when you can step back and take a good look with the Holy Spirit at your perceptual problem. And I say you there because that's how you experience it. When you're in the middle of a turmoil, it feels deeply personal. It feels like it's yours. So in order to come into this witnessing state that we're eager to come from, because it is a pain-free position, and that is very attractive. That is its top selling point. To step out of conflict, to come into the respite that the Holy Spirit offers and the comfort that's available, and to look from there upon the world you perceive with fresh eyes. Because we get very locked down into presumption very quick, and it really is challenging to us to be able to see anything differently when we are afraid. And yet Jesus says, do not ask me to take your fear away, for that I cannot do. Ask me to help you look at the underpinnings of the fear in your mind, the beliefs and the desires that are keeping it in place that you have yet to question and relinquish. And so that's what we do. We come there and we go, what is this? Not knowing. What am I looking at? Not understanding. And that is the beginner's mind that we need to come to, that fresh slate where we go, okay, hang on a second. Maybe I'm looking at this all wrong. And I find sometimes that when you draw out the perceptual problem, it makes it very easy. It can be like a cartoon. You do not have to be a grand artist to do this. You just need whatever writing instruments available to you and a piece of paper and to draw down. And I love this. Start with yourself, your character, their character, the scenario, the cat, the dog, the door that's locked to you, the door that's open to you, the window that is stuck, whatever the perception entails. And you write and draw it all down in the simplest form. And immediately you can see the relationship between things you've made by even what you've left out. Because is there a greater context to the scenario you're talking about? Are you in a war zone? Are you in the middle of an election? Are you at a baptism? Are you on your honeymoon? There could be any kind of scenario. And when you look at the entire picture that you've drawn out and all the influences, is Jupiter high in the sky and influencing according to the astrology? Whatever it is, you write it all down. Is the World Cup on? Did your favourite team win? Everything goes in the picture. When you draw it all out, what you begin to see is the relationships that you are focused on and the relationship meaning you've given every interaction and the way it reinforces your self-concept. Now, if somebody else came in and looked at your life situation, they drew a map of where they think you're at, you'd be like, well, what's your assets? Okay. And who are your strongest relationships? And what are your hopes and dreams? And what capacity does your body currently have? And do you have transport? And do you have a home? And do you have food? Someone else would start from a very practical, empowered situation of what you have, not what you perceive. And from what you have, using the expansiveness of their own mind, they would easily walk you out of nearly every scenario you're in. Because they're not seeing the prison that you're living in. And you are living in a prison. If there's any conflict or stalemate or survival mechanisms in your life, you're living in a prison. But it's a prison of the mind. And someone else coming in and just doing a very organic, natural assessment of where you're at, what age you are, where you live in the world, and what seems to be for you as a character, could work or walk your character into a whole new scenario. So the limitation then you begin to recognize is very firmly on your perception of the relationships between the different things in your life. And when I talk to people, that's nearly always what I see. I see the pen circle that they've drawn around that little spider that it won't cross, even though it's not confining them in any way, shape or form. It's just they don't know they can cross it yet. They're almost seeing in a one-dimensional way that this is an obstacle. But it's a line they've drawn in the mind themselves. And most of what I join with people about is the questioning of those lines, those limitations, those perceptions. Yes, even still as if they're a person in a world. What ultimately forgiveness is a redrawing of the lines where you erase them and everything is you. There is no circle anymore. All available assets are yours. All available potentialities are yours. All available persons are available to you for a relationship. All available environments are available to you if it's truly helpful. The question is, for forgiveness opportunities, what is truly helpful and what is needed now? And the Holy Spirit, instead of all the focus that we've put on our mother and our relationship with her, and how many times we call her or don't call her, and how she feels about that and how we feel about that, and the guilt that's been bouncing back and forth between mothers and daughters for millennia, until we question that any energy should go there and that that has anything to do with forgiveness, we can't progress to true awakening and forgiveness where it truly is in the entire self-concept and a shift in identity into Christ's presence, Christ awareness, and being the witness, being the dreamer of the dream. And for some reason I have to pause again. And now, part 4 of this very interesting, free-flowing, roaming podcast. We're now in a new room with windows open, so we can still hear the birds maybe in the background. We've got a cup of tea, which is very lovely. And for myself, I have to say, I'm keeping a firm watch on what may be occurring that is making this so challenging, because I have no idea why, when it welled up in the way it normally does. It's almost like the Red Seas normally part and time and space open up and everything is given. So I'm really tuning in for what the reflection is telling me and what my function is in this moment for the awakening mind, which is what serves my identity as self, whether that's as Christ or even as the little character. It serves it because there's an inherent care being taken when what is being reflected is being looked at in the mind. That naturally flows out to a reflection that is beneficent. We're not pushing anything away, and we're open to seeing where the challenges are coming from, and that they're coming from the mind, the deceived mind. Now, do recall that even being right-minded is still part of the deceived mind, so it's not about, am I happy in this moment or sad? And while the test of truth is truly how you feel, are you generating that feeling from things going your way, or is it an inherent feeling that is beyond the perceptual realm of what's unfolding in time and space? I do feel to share that I, in a perceptual way, I've seen that the mechanisms of the mind, according to the world and how it operates, at least my known world and how I've perceived it operated, have been shifting wildly. And none of the groundwork that even I would have laid has held true in terms of worldly things. And when I say held true, I mean being consistent. And the honesty level at which I've come to in the mind, meaning consistency, is holding. And that's really why I wanted to make this podcast today for you all, for myself primarily, and to acknowledge and witness to and record for posterity in this moment, this holy instant, that there is indeed a shift. And I am going to use words that are really not course related, like an energetic shift in how things operate that is wildly different than before. But I feel, and this is the key point here, that that is because our entire focus now has shifted so supremely to that original drawing we did, the self-concept drawing, the interpersonal relationships we have with everything from our dog to the planet Jupiter, to wars, to famines, to World Cups. And I feel that that relationship web that we've spun out across the universe is getting pinged. It's bouncing. Every thread is interconnected now to every other thread, whereas we didn't feel it before. It always was, but we didn't feel it or recognize it. And now we're in total recognition of the unity, of the wholeness of the perception, because it's just one singular Maya illusion. And we're aware that when one thread on the tapestry gets pulled, it's felt everywhere. And it very much calls us into coming into that fresh perspective in the second drawing that I described, where if somebody neutrally came into your life and evaluated even the character you appear to be, and what assets it had, and what abilities it had, and the physical or financial components of what it had, it would see a way to walk you through your world that would be dramatically different from what you perceive for yourself. And in so doing, would free the mind up. This is a pathway of relationship because the web that I've just described is an interpersonal relationship web. And rather than trying to break the webs, what we're here to do is to question them and watch every time there's a tug of guilt and shame or blame or attachment on the mind. Because the mind is feeling it, because the mind is the spider that spun out the entire web. And you just weren't aware before of the extent of your interaction, and I don't mean you personally, the mind's interaction with everything, but now it's felt, palpably felt. And that's why there's such reactivity being experienced in the world, because all of the relationships and pathways of the world are being tugged so that they can be felt in their origin story in the mind and questioned there. So that you will withdraw because you're beginning to understand that there's just no way through time and space that you can rectify or resolve anything. It's too immense. It's too complex. And all complexity is of the ego. And so we must come back for a very simple answer. And the answer is not to snip and cut the cord either between you and the perceptual world. The perceptual world exists in a benevolent way for you, for forgiveness. It's there to reflect to you everything you perceive, everything you think, everything you believe. And that projection makes perception and shows you your worldview. It's as if there's an exterior representation of an interior condition, but it's actually all the same thing. You're in a video game, and what you're playing out as you go through levels or you go through all the different character achievements that are necessary to get from one end of the game to the other, or to this level or that level, all the strawberries you collect and all the swords you fight with, they're literally just all to face, and this is the addiction of video games, an inner conflict. And it's to establish an ulterior identity to who you are in stillness and quiet and peace. And that's why they're beloved of so many people, because they get to energetically fight foes and move and aren't restricted. That's why they're beloved of children who are restricted to a certain extent. Maybe they're in their bedroom, maybe they have curfews, maybe they don't have finances to go out and do the things they want to do, maybe they're too young to be allowed to do what they would like in life, but not within the video game. Nobody, no parent can restrict them there. And they have this autonomy, and they have this capacity, and they have this ability to work out their frustrations and their rage and their hurt and even their happiness, and their form of connection with other players can be done through this video game. So it's not all negative expression. And yet, that is the same authority problem that we have, where we think we can create ourselves and therefore escape the contraction that we experienced at the idea of separation. Just the idea of it. The separation has never occurred. It's not true. This is a game playing out in time and space as if the separation occurred. It's the one doubt thought about our identity that we have, just repeating ad nauseum in multiple and many and varied ways. And so when we acknowledge that, and I would say this is the summer of the authority problem, and I would say it in a good way. It's not we have a problem with authority, remember. It's that we think we are the authority. We think we're the authority on ourselves. We think we're the authority on our perception. We think we're the authority on the world. And that's all you see is all these self-authoring bots running around fighting with each other online. And everyone is so now living at an emotional level rather than in a grounded, practical, true, even in the storyline, like even in the game, true grounded response to what is. You're not sitting listening to the birds outside. You're online looking at hell and harm coming your way, or happiness and your favorite pop star getting married, or your favorite World Cup team winning, or, doing really well. And that's what's happening. We're living in a phenomenal world. We always have been. And yet it's not practically helpful to live at that level if you want to do true forgiveness. The call is actually to come back down to a much more simplified version of the living of a world where you go practically, this is the environment I'm currently in. These are the actual characters I'm currently given to relate to. This is the actual finance that seems to be available to the character. And from there, dealing with just what's presented right in front of you and not hypotheticals and not imagined futures or frustrated pasts, look at what you have present to the character and then not limit it by what the character has. Learn to walk around your immediate environment in a very simplified way, not an emotional way, not a judgmental way, not in a way in which you're constantly processing and doing forgiveness, healing, exercises. That's never been what the course was intended for. It was 365 lessons to be done no faster than 1 year, and no one ever said do them again. It's wonderful if you like doing them again. It's wonderful if it's guided for you to do them again. However, the reliance on the trying to learn something new, as if all awareness wasn't already present inside, instead of simply being open and present to what's before you, that is the real cold face, if you like, of where forgiveness is needed. We are apt to make things so complex and deal at such a removed emotional level about insinuated ideas rather than even what's being actually rawly presented to you. Imagine if someone had a transcript of your day and it just read the practical things, like scene notes in a film. It didn't have the intention, so it didn't say angrily or something. And all of the words that had been said by you in your day were written down, and all of the words that all the other characters said was written down, like a play, like a screenplay. And then it said, he walks to the door, he closes the door, he exits, he walks out and sits under a tree. If everything was just written out like that, you'd see how much you're reading into your day. How much, you have the theme music and it's like he walks to the tree, but it's like dun 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 dun, like Jaws or something. And it's all an overlay. It's not happening at all. Now imagine that you begin to allow yourself to understand that that overlay isn't true at all, but that your whole world has far less to do with the world in which you're living, where you walk on grass or you walk on concrete with nice shoes, and far more to do with that overlay. That's how you begin to really experience that you're living in the mind and that this is all a virtual experience in the mind rather than there being a phenomenal exterior thing. The irony is, through time and space and all spiritual traditions, the mystics and the saints and the missionaries of our time, when they've stepped away from the project of the day that they were working on, that book that Thomas Merton was writing, or, that the converts that someone in the Congo was trying to make, and they stepped away. It was always into nature. It was always into the practicality of the day. It was always into being grounded, simply appreciating the you that goes on of itself. Because all of the environment is also you. You're also in relationship to the environment. And there's something whereby that environment is more indicative of how you feel about yourself and how beloved you are than interactions with people or even animals. If you can come into this greater sea of wafting wind through waving trees and feel the wiggliness of everything, as Alan Watts calls it, you will have an instant access point to that you that goes on of itself. That still isn't you. It's still part of the Maya and the illusion. And yet it has a presence and a quality of being that's more informative than the emotional, mental world that you keep operating through. It has a quality that can anchor the mind deeper into the ground of being. And so we're talking about what serves awakening and what serves the awakening mind. And therefore, walks or strolls, not to get anywhere, but to be where you are truly helpful. And so, at the end of what may be a very long podcast, I can't tell at this point because it's been paused so many times, the shift in the anniversary of launching myself into, I would say, my total commitment to this pathway being all I cared about, and all my resources and all my energy and all my focus and all my time for my mind, handing myself over to follow the Holy Spirit. 18 years later, seemingly in time and space, do I feel that I've achieved what I set out to do? And let me tell you what I set out to do then. I truly then set out to find peace. I truly then didn't set out to save others. I truly then wanted to end this experience of pain and suffering for myself. And I would say that it is not something that a persona achieves, obviously. And yet, through trying and giving my little willingness, and then later my very great willingness to this endeavor of allowing myself to be awakened, allowing myself to come to the truth of who I am, of being shown, of getting out of the way, of not knowing, of not needing to understand, and to simply present myself to whatever was in front of me again and again and go, Holy Spirit, what am I looking at? What is this? What is this for? What does this mean? I don't know. I don't understand. Why am I upset? Why are they upset? What is this upset in the mind? And by presenting myself again and again and again, I've come to a space that is so even and so receptive and has no sense of authority in the way we were describing of authorship, and yet has something foundational and steady and real and true. And I feel it's in that mirroring of eternal realities. It's that focus on eternal realities. And it's that line in the Course that we all love that says, nothing real can be threatened and nothing unreal exists. And I set out for that to be my real experience. And it is. And I continue to deepen in that experience. And anytime there's a thickness of things or a mesmerism or a slight, sanding off of one more little hook and eye on the world, I offer and proffer my arms gladly to that mitt that's going to scrub me down and shine me up and get me clear in the mind. And it's so helpful now to have that perspective, because when I join with others and they tell me their entire world and their perceptions and what they're experiencing, my job is to not know. My job is to not presume to understand. And my job is to listen to the Holy Spirit as they speak with me. And that's all I do. And if something comes out of my mouth, it is then coming from that fresh perspective that is beyond the storytelling. It's beyond Sarah's perception of the storytelling. It's beyond time and space. And it's something usually actionable and also at once comforting, that can lead the mind to that spacious place. Psalm 18:19. The psalm I love, I'll put it in the show notes. He brought me to a spacious place. He delivered me because he delighted in me. And that's Psalm 18:19. And remember when I shared that what's ideal for awakening is that you have not just what confronts you in front of your witnessing self, but also a spacious place. And it's a mental spacious place where you can reflect with the Comforter upon what you're seeing and be undisturbed. And that little garden, that respite that is present when we come to the Comforter, and then it's like an amalgamation, it's like inherently within your sense of self, that spacious place that's always available to you, where you sink into what's true and eternal, and nothing real can be threatened, and nothing unreal exists. And from there, the peace of God is really enveloping you like a womb. And you may be sent on many busy doings, and you may need to have access to that even when the accuser appears before you. And yet it's all to really sanctify that spaciousness in the mind as being what is real, and everything else as being unreal. And therefore the threat level of seeming occurrences in time and space diminishes, because you are firmly grounded in that spaciousness of what is true and eternal. And as you appear to walk through time and space, being a character in the world, you mirror these eternal realities, and you are simply being yourself a blessing. You're a blessing to the whole entire universe. You're even a blessing to the self-concept character you think you are. You recognize you can comfort that character just as easily as another. And so, instead of authoring yourself, you become a living, vibrant vehicle, a communication device that breathes the breath of life into every seeming situation. And this is how you bring the darkness to light. You notice the perceptions and you bring them back to this spacious place, and you offer them without consideration for what you think they mean and for what you think you need to understand from them. You come with wholly empty arms of presumption to your God, and peace is your inheritance.
Ta-da!